Chapter 2. Activity and Event. You are sitting at home reading a book. Your husband walks into the room. Your activity is interrupted, however slightly, by this event. Activities and events combined make up situations. The actor's job is to constantly be dealing with events that interrupt their activities. The relationship of activities to events is the all-important first step along the actor's path, because it is the relationship between activity and event that defines how the event is altered by the activity, and the activity altered by the event. Activities. Our lives are one constant activity. We are always doing something, even when we are sitting still. The Zen monk sitting zazen is engaged in the activity of non-action. Life does not stand still, and life does not stop doing things. Even while sleeping, people are moving through time if nothing else. So, no matter the level of seriousness that the activity has, there is always an activity. Actors sometimes forget this. They stand on stage, or in front of the camera, and we can see that they are only there waiting to say their line, or act, with the other actor. They have no activity to connect them to the reality of living, the reality of doing. The importance of activities cannot be ignored, and an actor must always have one. Even the simplest of life goes on type of activity is always present in our lives, and the actor has to reflect this in their work. But first, let's take a look at how events relate to activities more closely. Events. Whenever people interact with one another, or with their environment, an event happens. Something as simple as the husband entering the room is an event. The wife's activity is interrupted, however briefly, by this event. Is this event a dramatic one? Probably not. This type of event happens literally billions of times each day. What makes an event dramatic enough that a storyteller would take the time to tell it in the first place, and you, the public, the time to watch and listen? Let's take a look at our husband and wife. The woman is reading a book, and her husband enters the room. She glances up to see him holding a gun in his hand. A what? The situation, and our perception of it, has changed, because the consequences of the man's possible behavior have changed. The stakes have been notched up, a couple of notches, by the introduction of the gun to the situation. She looks at him a moment, but does not seem concerned. But since her husband with a gun in his hand is not an everyday event, she asks, "Are you going hunting, dear?" Her original activity of reading is interrupted by the event to the extent that she stops reading long enough to ask her husband a question. The event grips her more greatly than before. It calls for her to devote more attention away from her activity to understand, or to deal with. As observers of this event, we are also gripped by his actions. But since the wife reacts calmly, the situation doesn't escalate. The husband raises a gun and points it at her, a very serious look on his face. The event has completely overshadowed her activity. This is not an event that happens, or should ever happen. Frightened, she calls his name. His actions completely grip her attention, as they do ours, and her activity is completely overridden by the event. The consequences have escalated from the mundane to the highly dramatic in a matter of moments. So, an event is dramatic because of the consequences. Yes, exactly so. But my example is not primarily designed to define drama. It is designed to point out the relationship between events and activities. There was a progression to the events in the example that I just gave you. The woman's activity of reading was progressively decreased. As her attention was more and more gripped, her need to focus on the event increased, and her need to do the activity decreased, until its importance was minimal or non-existent. Let me change the situation a little for you. You are leaving work. You go to the garage and get into your car. You are tired, and you just want to get home. You leave the garage and are driving your usual route home, the activity. As you leave the freeway, another car exits with you. It turns when you turn, and you begin to suspect that it is following you, the event. You turn onto the road that will take you to your house. The car turns also, then starts to speed up. It suddenly rams your car from behind, an escalation of the event. This is as consequential an event as the woman's event with her husband. But, In this situation, your activity also has consequences. You can't simply stop driving to pay attention to the car ramming you. So, while the consequences of an event dictate the level of attention that is needed to deal with that event, the consequence of the activity that is being interrupted will also demand a level of attention. The more important the activity, the harder it is for the event to take attention away from it. Let me give you another example. You are on the same drive home. The same car follows you, and you notice it at the same time. But when you turn onto your street, it doesn't turn with you, but goes straight. You cease to pay attention to it, and your attention returns fully to your activity of driving. The consequences of the other car were only minimal. Certainly not enough to keep your attention for very long. The relationship between events and activities is a constant judgment of values and importance. The actor must constantly be aware of how these values and importances affect the situations that they are in. They determine whether or not the actor carries on the various activities they are engaged in. They determine how gripped the actor is by the events at any one moment. Can the actor ignore the car behind them? No. Can the actor ignore that they are driving a car? No. While there are countless examples of people ignoring or dismissing the events that take place around them, the actor has no such luxury. An actor must respond to every event to the greatest possible extent, according to the dictates of the story. Even in real life, every event is noted, but the person for various reasons will not allow themselves to be conscious of the fact. It is very common, and indeed is a survival trait. If we had to take notice of every fact, or every event, we would be nervous wrecks before too long. So our minds filter out the events that we understand as trivial or routine. They also filter out events that they cannot, for any number of reasons, approach emotionally. This is called denial. An actor, however, cannot allow themselves to deny the events. The actor's job of relating to events is made easier by the fact that stories contain, hopefully, no events that are trivial. So everything that happens in a story must be paid attention to, at least to some degree. The actor then only needs to decide the relative value of the events. But this isn't all that the actor must decide about the relationship of events to activities. You notice that I have used the word gripped several times. It is a very important word because it dictates when an actor must take their attention off of their activity and apply it to the event. If an actor cannot deny any event in the story that they encounter, then they cannot avoid being gripped to whatever degree by those events. While there is no way, except in your gut, to tell you when this happens, and to what degree, we can dictate how it will happen. Focus. Focus for an actor is different from the normal type of focus that we engage in our lives. Acting is a distillation and a concentration of life. So an actor never does anything in a trivial way. This applies to focus as well. When an actor focuses on an activity, it's as if a laser beam were focusing. So when an event takes place, this laser beam snaps to the event and remains focused there for a time, depending on the nature of the event. If the event is trivial and doesn't take much attention, then the laser beam snaps back to the activity. This quality of snapping back and forth is how an actor should be gripped, or not gripped, by an event. This type of concentration and this level of focus elevates and quickens the actor's responses. Now, before you accuse me of dictating an actor's movements in a role that call for slow or deliberate actions, I am going to say this. When I talk about the focus of an actor, I am not talking about the focus of the person that they play. An actor's focus must be clear and precise, snap snap, just so. The person that they play can be anything at all. So don't confuse the two. They are separate. And an actor that confuses themselves and their job as an actor with the person that they are portraying is in serious trouble. Read the biography of Peter Sellers for an example of this problem. So even if the person that you are portraying is a dullard, you as the actor must be razor sharp as that dullard. Otherwise the clarity of the character is muddied, and the audience cannot see clearly what you are doing. And this brings us to the one thing that evocative acting is designed to have: audience involvement. When an actor performs, Besides being in an imaginary situation, filled with the events and activities of the story, they are in a very real relationship with the audience. This relationship, like any other, has responsibilities that must be met by both people. The audience's responsibility is to allow themselves to be engaged by you, despite the artificiality of the situation, to pay attention and not interrupt the story. The actor's responsibility is to behave truthfully enough that the audience remains engaged, and to relate the story in a clear, precise, and dynamic way. Whenever either the actor or the audience does not do these things, the connection is broken, and the relationship is damaged. This connection and the story are what the theatrical event is all about. It is what the audience comes to experience. It is what they pay their money for. When the actor gives an event more importance than it deserves in the situation, or less importance. When the actor leaves their activity without an important enough event to make leaving genuine. When the actor's activity is given more importance than the event demands, or given less importance than it requires. When the actor misjudges the balance between event and activity. When the actor is not clear in their focus or their presentation. When any of these things take place, the audience's BS detector goes off, and they are thrown out of connection to the story. Because the audience, while they may be from all walks of life and educational levels, have a gut-level understanding of the truth of human interaction. So much so, that they know when there is even the slightest difference between the truth and an actor's behavior. So any difference between the universal human truth of a situation and the actor's behavior must be accounted for, or the relationship between the audience and the actor will suffer. They may ignore that the actor is not reacting the way that they know they should. But they will not miss it in their gut, where it matters most. And this applies to comedy, as well as drama. Only in comedy it is more obvious, because they don't laugh. But in comedy, the actor purposely makes every one of the mistakes that I just talked about. They overreact, underreact. They trivialize the importance of events. They blow events out of importance. They attach a great importance to their own activities when events of high drama are taking place around them. They undercut all the consequences. They do all these things, and never once damage the relationship to the audience. How is this? Think again about the difference between the actor's job and the character's situation, and the answer will come clear. It is the person in the story that makes all these mistakes, and not the actor. Even the most dedicated comedian never undercuts the relationship to the audience. The comic actor is as seriously engaged in the acting craft as any dramatic actor ever could be. And the result of all this hard work is the audience's laughter. When you tie all these areas together, you can see how the relationship between the event and the activity affects the relationship to the audience. The actor walks a fine line, and the best advice is to trust your gut at every turn. Thanks for watching.